China's military expansion plans continue to progress at a remarkable rate, with Beijing desperate to close the gap between itself and the United States ahead of a possible conflict between the two superpowers. It's built both the largest navy and the largest army on Earth, and regularly shows off its latest and greatest innovations, from AI-integrated swarm drones to hypersonic missiles. But as Beijing scrambles to catch up, the US isn't simply standing still. It's making some major improvements of its own to maintain its status as the world's mightiest military power. One of those improvements represents a massive problem for China's record-setting navy, as the US just transformed the B-2's Spirit into an invisible fleet destroyer, with the power to cut Beijing's naval force down to size from literally hundreds of miles away. As arguably the most iconic bomber ever created, the B-2 requires little introduction. Its distinctive flying wing silhouette is instantly recognizable around the globe, and its extraordinary stealth capabilities have made it one of the most fearsome and effective aircraft of all time. Capable of penetrating enemy airspace without being seen, this aircraft has proven its worth on countless occasions, having played a leading role in numerous conflicts since entering service in 1997. It was used in the Kosovo War in 1999, for example, as well as the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya and Yemen, and more recently in Iran. For much of its time in service, however, the B-2 has generally been used to strike land-based targets like Serbian military infrastructure in Kosovo, Taliban strongholds in Afghanistan, and underground nuclear facilities in Iran. It's proven remarkably effective when it comes to destroying the likes of bunkers, bases, and air defenses. Yet, it was never regarded as a serious anti-ship asset. Even though it had the potential to wipe out warships and other naval assets, thanks to its vast payload capacity, impressive range, and stealth capabilities, there was always one big issue holding the B-2 back: a lack of maritime munitions. If the US wanted to bomb a warship with a B-2 in years gone by, it would have had to rely on gravity-driven smart bombs like the GBU-31 JDAM. And if a B-2 wanted to hit a moving warship with a JDAM, it would have had to fly almost directly over its target before dropping its payload. Even though the B-2 has such advanced stealth features, flying so close to enemy vessels could still be an incredibly risky maneuver, potentially exposing the bomber to an array of radars and integrated air defense systems. What's more, even though they're incredibly accurate against fixed targets, JDAMs lack the necessary components like infrared seeker heads and active radar systems to actively track and home in on enemy vessels at sea. Because of these limitations, the B-2 was largely relegated to a backseat role when it came to counter-maritime missions, with the likes of the B-1B Lancer being used instead. In 2025, however, the US military flipped the script. A test took place sometime in late April near Eglin Air Force Base in northwest Florida, in which a B-2 bomber dropped a 500-pound Quicksink maritime weapon. Quicksink is a modified JDAM designed specifically to deal with naval targets. The way it works is remarkably effective. First, a target is identified, typically with the aid of maritime patrol and reconnaissance aircraft, like the P-8 Poseidon, which then relays the target's coordinates to the strike aircraft, like a B-2 bomber. The bomber then closes distance on its target and drops its payload from above. Just like a standard JDAM, the Quicksink then relies on its built-in GPS and inertial navigation systems to travel towards the target's last known location. Once it enters range, the bomb's Weapon Open Systems architecture, WOSA, Imaging Infrared Seeker, kicks in to help it home in on its target. It scans the surrounding area, looking for a ship with the same dimensions and thermal signature as the one it's aiming for, then provides real-time course corrections to track the vessel as it moves. But the Quicksink doesn't simply collide with the side of its target or strike it from above. Instead, it actually dives down into the water beside the ship, using a delayed action fuse to detonate right beside the hull. The resulting blast generates a large shockwave, which is typically strong enough to lift the ship's hull out of the water and blow a hole in its base. In effect, it breaks the ship's back, which generally leads to it sinking in a matter of seconds, hence the Quicksink name. This was huge news at the time, with General David Alvin, the US Air Force's Chief of Staff, writing on X, "We unleashed a new Quicksink weapon, which significantly enhances our ability to strike stationary or moving surface vessels. This is a true game changer for the Department of Defense and is exactly what President Donald Trump means by peace through strength." It clearly solved the pre-existing problem of the B-2 being unable to reliably strike moving targets at sea, and it was a significant upgrade to the bomber's capabilities. Even at the time, however, some expert observers question how effective the Quicksink could be against the Chinese Navy, given its vast size and advanced air defense capabilities. Tom Shughart, for example, a former US Navy submarine warfare officer and senior fellow at the Center for a New American Society, wrote online that he would be pretty surprised if the US military would risk flying a B-2 bomber close enough to Chinese warships to drop a bomb of this kind, adding, "Are we 1000% sure that their air defense systems aren't going to get a sniff?" That same question was echoed by many other military experts, who were generally thrilled to see the B-2 expand its arsenal, but also concerned that it might not provide much value in a hypothetical conflict with China. Given that each B-2 is valued at approximately $2 billion and there are only 19 of these bombers in service today, it stands to reason that the Air Force would be reluctant to put such a rare and valuable asset into an unnecessarily risky situation when other more sensible alternatives still existed. In short, the addition of the Quicksink was undoubtedly a step in the right direction, but perhaps not quite a large enough step to make a real difference. Fortunately, the US wasn't done there. Behind the scenes, the military was working on another arsenal addition to the B-2 Spirit, one that would elevate its capacities to far greater heights. One that would take this already legendary aircraft to an even greater level of operational excellence and transform it into the perfect counter for China's rapidly expanding naval force. The AGM-158C long-range anti-ship missile LRASM, an air-launched anti-ship cruise missile that was developed by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency (DARPA) in the 2010s and entered service in 2018 with the US Air Force and Navy. Measuring up at an estimated 14 feet or 4.26 meters in length, with a wingspan of 8 feet 10 inches or 2.7 meters and a weight of 2,760 pounds or 1,250 kilograms, the LRASM is one of the most advanced anti-ship munitions in existence today. It's powered by a Williams F107 WR105 turbofan engine, which allows it to reach high subsonic speeds of around Mach 0.9, 690 miles per hour, or 1,111 kilometers per hour, and it boasts an operational range of up to 500 nautical miles, or 926 kilometers. With GPS and inertial navigation systems, combined with infrared and electro-optical sensors, plus AI guidance technology, the LRASM is extraordinarily precise, capable of striking within less than 10 feet or 3 meters of its target every time. And since it's fitted with a whopping 1,000-pound, 453-kilogram WDU-42B He blast fragmentation warhead, it packs more than enough firepower to eliminate even the largest modern warships, including cruisers and destroyers. On top of all this, the LRASM also incorporates the kind of stealth technology seen on aircraft like the B-2 itself. It boasts a low observable airframe with a minimized radar cross-section to help it evade detection as it travels through hostile airspace, and also uses passive electronic support measures and radio frequency sensors to help it home in on its targets without emitting easily detectable signals on its approach. All of these features make the LRASM one of the biggest threats to even the strongest naval fleets on the planet, but for the first several years of its existence, it could only be launched by a small selection of platforms, including the B-1 Lancer, the F/A-18EF Super Hornet, and the F-35 Lightning II. In June 2026, the B-2 Spirit officially joined the list. But before we get into how that happened and what it means, the military show brings you the full picture, not just the headlines. Hit subscribe to stay ahead of the curve. On June 29, 2026, the United States Air Force Global Strike Command published an astonishing report, revealing that the Pacific Air Forces had conducted a live-fire sinking exercise using the B-2 Spirit and a long-range anti-ship missile. The exercise took place just north of the Mariana Islands, not far from the US island territory of Guam, one of America's most crucial strategic hubs in the Western Pacific. It was part of the Valiant Shield 26 exercise, the latest edition of the Valiant Shield War Games, which are among the largest US military exercises to take place in the Pacific Ocean and have been running since 2006. According to detailed reports of the event, the exercise involved the B-2 firing a single LRASM at the USS Juneau, an Austin-class amphibious transport dock that was laid down in 1965 and launched a year later in 1966. Nicknamed the Mighty J, the Juneau completed numerous deployments during the Vietnam War and was also involved in both Operation Desert Shield and Operation Desert Storm during the Iraq War. After decades of service, this amphibious transport dock was officially decommissioned in 2008, and in 2026, it was selected as a target ship to be sunk in Valiant Shield. It was struck by a Harpoon missile, fired by a Navy P-8A Poseidon, as well as a torpedo launch from a Japanese submarine, in addition to the B-2's LRASM, and sank to the briny depths of the Pacific, never to be seen again. This was a huge leap forward for the B-2, and it's incredibly encouraging from a US perspective to see that this test was successful. It proves not only that the B-2 can be equipped with LRASMs, but it can be trusted to use them effectively to disable and destroy naval targets. And that's so vital when it comes to helping the US prepare for a possible confrontation with China. As General Kevin B. Schneider, commander of the Pacific Air Forces, notes, the B-2's impressive performance underscores the US military's commitment to adaptability and flexibility in the face of emerging security challenges. By prioritizing counter-maritime strike operations, we can maintain a decisive edge over adversaries, protect our national interests, and ensure the free and open Pacific that underpins our global security. This is a far bigger upgrade than the Quicksink for several key reasons. Arguably, the most important of them all is range. The issue with Quicksink and other bombs is that they have to be dropped from relatively close distances to the target. Even with a stealthy aircraft like the B-2, the closer you get to the enemy, the greater the risk becomes of them being able to detect you and fire at you. The LRASM removes that risk entirely. Since it has a massive operational range of up to 500 nautical miles, it can be launched from safe standoff distances. Theoretically, for example, the US Air Force could deploy its B-2 bomber fleet to reasonably safe locations hundreds of miles off the coast of China, above the likes of the South China Sea, East China Sea, or even the Philippine Sea, and fire LRASMs directly at any of the People's Liberation Navy's 3 Fleet Command headquarters, which are situated in Qingdao to the north, Ningbo in the east, and Zhangjiang to the south. Since the B-2 is virtually invisible in the air, China's radars and defenses would have an immensely tough time spotting these aircraft as they make their approach. Then, upon releasing their payloads, the B-2s could swiftly retreat, vanishing from view in the blink of an eye and heading back to Guam or other American air bases in locations like Japan, South Korea, and the Indian Ocean territory of Diego Garcia. Of course, the issue of launching missiles from so far away is that it can give the enemy more time and opportunities to react, using their own radars and air defenses to detect and disable the munition before it reaches its target. Fortunately, the LRASM is well equipped to counteract that challenge as well. Its low observable stealth profile gives it a greater than average chance of bypassing even relatively dense anti-access and aerial denial networks, while its autonomous capabilities and passive sensor technology makes it harder to spot as it closes the distance on its target. Often, these missiles don't emit any major detectable signals until the terminal phase of their flights, and by that point, it's usually already too late for the enemy to do anything about it. Beijing does boast some of the most advanced air defense systems in the world, though their reliability has been called into question in the past, so they may still be able to spot and eliminate some of these missiles before they collide with PLA warships. However, experts estimate that the B-2 could carry up to 16 LRASMs at a time thanks to its vast internal weapons bays. That would enable a single bomber to threaten 16 separate warships at once. A single salvo could wipe out an entire PLA surface action group. Alternatively, multiple missiles could be fired at particularly high-value targets, like the Type 055 class destroyers, which are ranked among the very best in the world, boasting a staggering 112 vertical launch cells, or one of Beijing's growing collection of aircraft carriers. Again, even if some of those missiles were intercepted en route, there's an extremely high chance that others would manage to make it through, thanks to their advanced sensors and AI guidance systems that allow for mid-air course corrections and evasive maneuvers. When launched in groups, LRASMs are even able to effectively communicate with one another, sharing data via a secure data link in order to fine-tune their flight paths and avoid enemy defenses. They also follow sea-skimming flight profiles during the final stages of their approach, which makes them even more difficult to detect and eliminate. And thanks to their infrared imaging, they're also able to strike the most vulnerable parts of enemy vessels, meaning that every successful impact has the highest possible chance of causing a ship to sink. According to statistics from the US Department of Defense, China operates approximately 370 warships, and its fleet continues to expand with each passing year, with projections of around 435 ships by 2030. But if that fleet comes against American B-2 bombers loaded with full complements of long-range anti-ship missiles, its numbers could go down incredibly quickly. And the US is already taking steps to ensure it has more than enough of these missiles to threaten not just part of Beijing's fleet, but its entire navy. In April of 2026, news reports revealed that the Navy was looking to spend close to $1 billion on LRASM production. And this wasn't a one-off, it was part of a broader trend. The Navy's FY 2026 budget request included roughly $1 billion to procure 200 LRASMs, a sharp increase from the 91 missiles it procured in FY 2024. To be more precise, the FY 2027 budget request submitted to Congress included funding for 177 of these missiles at a cost of around $907 million. That's 3 consecutive years of buying some of the world's most capable anti-ship missiles in substantial quantities. That sends a message, loud and clear, to Beijing and America's other enemies around the world. It doesn't matter how many warships you build, how big your navies become, how much power you try to project across the ocean waves, the US military will always have the upper hand. It will always have the munitions it needs to send your vessels to the ocean floor, and there's nothing you can do to stop that. Even if you invest in bigger and better defenses, these missiles are smart enough to evade them. Even if you layer those defenses, the US has enough missiles to overwhelm them. Even if you try to target the launch platforms and prevent the missiles from being fired in the first place, the US can now launch them from one of the greatest stealth bombers ever made, which is almost impossible to detect even when it's in your own airspace. In short, the US military has thought of everything. It covered every base and countered every possibility. In combining a world-leading missile with a world-leading launch platform, it's created the ultimate fleet destroyer. And the most astonishing part is that it could still take this concept to even greater levels, as there's every possibility that the B-2's successor, the B-21 Raider, could also have the capability to fire the very same long-range anti-ship missiles too, giving the Air Force even more launch platforms with even greater stealth technologies. For years, fears had been rising about China's naval expansion and the fact that the US seemingly couldn't keep up with Beijing's remarkable rate of shipbuilding. In reality, America never needed to build dozens of ships to stay ahead of China, it just had to find better ways to destroy them. Now it has. Learn more about how the US is identifying and exploiting China's military weaknesses in this video, or check out this one to see how the US Navy turned a multi-billion-dollar disaster into a world-leading superweapon. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to The Military Show for more insightful reporting just like this.